right, hello there, thrill seekers. And one more reminder, maybe not one more, maybe I'll do another one tomorrow. But anyway, a reminder that this Saturday, June 18th, 2022, I will be doing an online event with East West Books. And that will be at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and you'll have to figure out what other time that is in your area because I can't figure it out. Anyway, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, and the URL is on the screen below. But if that URL is too long for you to remember, just go to eastwestbooks.org and look up their events page. That's how I found the URL that I put up on your screen, so that's how you can find it. All right, the song this morning was Hooked on a Feeling, originally by B.J. Thomas and then Blue Suede, I think is their name, or Blue Swede, I'm not sure. Anyway, did the cover that you probably heard on Guardians of the Galaxy with a hooga chaka. Well, the first version was by B.J. Thomas, and it had, oh, there's the sprinklers going off next door, and it had an electric sitar, which I played, also, once again, through the Ravish sitar pedal. That makes it sound even more sitar-y. So best combination I've found is the electric sitar with the Ravish sitar pedal. It sounds pretty neat, and a little bit of delay. So in case you wonder how I got that sound. So I got a question, and since before your sun burned hot in space and before your race was born, I have awaited a question. And here it goes. First off, I'm a big fan. I'm halfway through The Other Side of Nothing, and I'm loving it. Well, thank you very much. That gave me a chance to advertise my new book, The Other Side of Nothing, on this channel. Very insightful in answering a lot of questions. I do, however, have a specific question about the Buddhist Zen view on family and friends. As I come to understand the Buddhist philosophy of non-attachment, I find myself struggling with how to apply or feel about this when it comes to my family and close friends. We seem to naturally form a special bond or closeness with our families and good friends, and this is often expressed as our love, in quotes, for them. When I consider the idea of non-attachment, I find it quite appealing, but then I find myself hesitating when it comes to family and friends. I feel like I can't help but conflate what I call my love for them with a sense of attachment of some sort. How might I better understand familial love in the context of Buddhist non-attachment? Okay, there's the question. So this is a question that I've answered frequently, so it's one of my FAQs. I wrote about this in several of my books. I know I did a chapter about it in Sex, Sin, and Zen. I'm pretty sure I addressed the whole issue in the book Sit Down and Shut Up, probably in Hardcore Zen. I don't think I specifically called out the non-attachment aspect of this issue in my book Letters to a Dead Friend about Zen, but that is a book of letters to a dead friend. Therefore, you should be able to kind of glean my views on non-attachment and familial matters from that if you want to read into it. And finally, it's similarly infused into the book Zen Wrapped in Karma Dipped in Chocolate, which is also about my relationship with my mother and the coworkers I worked with in my company and the people I deal with on the road and that kind of stuff. So it's all in there. So this is an FAQ. So anything I say from now on, dear questioner who sent me that question, don't take it personally. I addressed this issue when I looked it up on this channel. I can see that I addressed it at least 2 years ago, and I think I've addressed it several times over the years that I've done this YouTube channel and on my blog. So that's suffice to say that I've talked about this a lot. So I think the problem is that a lot of people's ideas about what Zen Buddhism is, especially when it comes to these ideas like non-attachment, comes from Mr. Spock. Even if you're not a Star Trek fan, you kind of culturally were familiar with Mr. Spock. And Mr. Spock, in case you don't know, is the alien from planet Vulcan who serves on the Starship Enterprise, and his people have dispensed with emotion. That's their main deal. And Gene Roddenberry, who created the character and created Star Trek, was a big fan of Zen. In fact, he had his wedding. He went to Japan to have his wedding to, what's her name? anyway, the woman who played the computer on the show. Anyway, he got married to her in a Zen wedding. I think it's called a Shinto Buddhist wedding in most literature that I've seen, but he was very enamored with Zen. So, as far as I know, he never practiced, but he read a lot, apparently, and I think his reading of Zen influenced his creation of the character of Mr. Spock, who's supposed to be a Zen guy, right? Who's supposed to be kind of the alien version of a Zen guy. And he's got no emotions, and he doesn't love anybody, but the only time he shows love for anybody is when his human half, because he's half human, comes out. But if you actually meet any Zen practitioners, you will find that most of us are very little like Mr. Spock. I mean, we do smile, we do frown, we do laugh and cry, we do love and care about our friends and families. I just got married. My 1-year anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks. So I obviously care for my wife. I care for Ziggy Dog, who appears in these videos. So I got a lot of attachment there when it comes to that. So what I thought I would do by way of answering this question this time, since I'm trying to mix up the answers so people who've seen my other answers don't get bored, I thought I would read you something from the book Embracing Mind, The Zen Talks of Kobun Chino Otogawa. And those of you who've watched this channel long enough know that Kobun Chino Otogawa was my first Zen teacher's teacher. I never actually met Kobun. He passed away before I had a chance, but I heard a lot about Kobun from Tim, and I feel like whatever Kobun had sort of infused into Tim, so I got a lot of Kobun's teachings by proxy that way. So I thought I'd read you 2 things in which he talks about the precepts and relates them to the idea of attachment. So let's start with, we're going to go sort of backwards from precept 8 to precept, what is the other one? 3. Okay. So precept 8. Now he gives the version that Bodhidharma gave, and if you want to know more about the Bodhidharma precepts, go read The Other Side of Nothing, because I wrote a lot about that there, but let's just suffice to say Bodhidharma was a guy who came along later and talked about the precepts, and the Bodhidharma version of the precepts were probably not written by Bodhidharma himself, but in the spirit of Bodhidharma. So here we go. Self-nature is mysteriously profound. In the midst of all-pervading truth, not to raise hoarding, attaching on a single form is called no hoarding precept. So the precept originally is the precept of not hoarding or not being stingy. And Kobun comments, Dogen Zenji's words on the 8th precept were, one phrase, one force, myriad phenomena, one truth, one confirmation. All Buddha, all patriarch, it has never been hoarded at all. And of course, for those of you who might be sensitive to such matters, most people substitute the word ancestor now for patriarch because the original word is non-gendered, but in early translations they use the word patriarch. These are the Buddhists who came after the Buddha and were supposed to be enlightened just like him. Those are the ancestors, aka patriarchs. Kobun comments, when you understand that everything was given to everyone in the beginning, a sense comes that there is nothing to limit this as mine or that as non-mine. When you go to the mountain and see a flower blooming and you pick it up, break it, and make it yours, this is attachment. If you let it be there for everything and everyone, this is what non-attachment is. The original meaning is 2 characters, stingy and greedy. I might think, this is mine and that is yours, the whole thing was given to me, so you cannot take it from me. If you keep something, you may have had the idea that it was possessed by you, but it was not possessed by you. You become very poor by having this idea. Dogen Zenji said, when you open your hand, everything is in your hand. When you close your hand, the air is very limited. Explaining this idea of possession in this very pure way, naturally you understand this precept. When I say everything is given to you, it sounds like everything belongs to you, and you may feel really good. But when I say nothing belongs to you, you may feel bad. Even yourself doesn't belong to you. You are everything. This means you actually have no limit. Knowing this precept is having this deep understanding. Every single thing we appreciate is all public truth and whole Dharma. Teaching is maybe the unseen or spiritual part of the truth, And this material or visible part is the public truth. Even if a child dies after 1 week, you cannot say she didn't have the whole thing. Maybe you put your idea on this occasion, but she may say, no, I lived enough. Every minute, every second, we are unfolding teachings, and all materials are the dynamics of life. So there is nothing to hoard, nothing to not show to people, nothing to keep apart from the whole, calling it your own. And yet, in ordinary life, we have a dilemma. When someone asks us to help some group or themselves, how do we respond? We seem to see very unhappy situations in the external world, reflecting different circumstances. Political movements put forth methods to solve social problems, and sometimes you offer your energy, hoping to solve a basic problem. But something is missing when we act in that way. We are forgetting something. We do not know the reason for their suffering. It could be a national policy which is wrong, but this approach is a seesaw game. When you press very hard on one side of the argument, you just see half of the situation. If you press on the other side, it looks like the right answer is over there. The necessity of acting becomes a big challenge. What to do right now? This is the basic matter. You don't have to start something new. You just live on. Go on living. So I like that, and that's why I read you the whole thing. I think that's a really interesting way of putting it. So he's equating attaching with hoarding, the idea of saying this is mine and doesn't belong to anybody else. And I think that when it comes to family and friends, we don't have that attitude, or, well, sometimes we have that attitude, but we understand, I think most of us understand, that that's not the right attitude. The attitude is to be kind of free. Your family and friends are meaningful to you. They are something you are attached to in the conventional sense, but you're not trying to hold them on and keep them to yourself. So that's one meaning of non-attachment. Now I'd like to read a little bit about what he says about the third precept, because this also deals with attachment. This again quotes the Bodhidharma version of the precept, and it goes, "Self-nature is mysteriously profound, truth of no attachment. Not to give birth to attaching to loving is called no desiring, fuin yoku." I haven't looked that up. I'm not sure what that means. It's Japanese. No wrong, no scattered desiring. And he says, now this precept is usually, well, not usually, but one of the versions, original versions, is do not commit adultery. So that's what you need to know as a background. It always puzzles us what this truly means. Is this only for married or engaged couples, or is it just the subject of men and women? For most people, this precept has been limited to no committing adultery. This no committing adultery is very interesting. Bodhidharma spoke of many projected desires. He explained it this way: not to give birth to attachment in the truth of non-attachment. It is called no desire for fulfillment. Attachment is absolutely illusion at this point. At one time, this was a very big subject for me, especially until my marriage day. For me, this is Kobun talking, to touch a woman was a very big fear. It always caused deep guilt within me. It was a sort of strange experience. I am wondering what it was, what caused that deep anxiety, which appears as guilt or maybe helpless regret. Before I knew any woman, I was talking about purity of monkhood. My mother was very concerned about my fixed ideas. You women may be familiar with this kind of feeling. You may have feared man in many ways, wanting to keep your own purity. The difference between pure and impure you didn't know, but you wanted it to be a single existence and become a nun in a very holy, unstained existence. You still have a deep curiosity and a sort of respect for people who lead a single life, don't you? It's only in very recent times that I really notice the difference between purity of love and attachment. I'm very much aware of my attachment in love. One is attached to parts of the whole thing. I really understand now why Bodhidharma said not to give birth to attachment in the truth of non-attachment. Non-attachment is truth. To be fond of things, particularly your favorite things, is what attachment means. In such situations, we give birth to attachment. I like this, I don't like that. But when we begin to sense why we like this and don't like that, it becomes very complicated. Sometimes unlike and dislike go together. Sometimes alike and dislike go together. That is, if you see somebody who's very much like you, you dislike that person. This is sticking to each other or rejecting each other is and it is very hard because intellect doesn't help and emotion is no way to solve it. So I'm going to stop there. There's a lot more than that, but that one's a bit longer than the one I read you before. And this is another thing about that kind of grasping feeling, that kind of attachment that says that this thing is mine and doesn't belong to anybody else, and that it must remain the way I think it is forever. A lot of what I think is the problem with attachment is the feeling that this thing is possessed by me and this thing must remain the way it is always. So obviously, being able to let go is a very important thing in Zazen, in actual Zazen practice. When you're doing the practice, one of the most important things to be able to do is to be able to let go of whatever comes through your mind during Zazen. And this becomes a matter of very practical importance when you're doing the practice, because otherwise it's too difficult. It's really, really difficult to do Zazen if you're sitting there, kind of holding on to whatever comes through your mind. It's the same thing in a general sense with relationships and such like. Whatever comes through your mind, you let it go. That's what non-attachment is. And being free with all things. And as Kobun says, non-attachment is the truth. You can't be attached. In one sense, everything is attached to everything else because everything is one thing. On the other hand, everything is fluid and in motion and constantly changing. So if you insist on things remaining as they are, it doesn't work. Or if you limit things as to this is mine and these other things are not mine, then you also get in trouble. But conversely, you get in trouble if you say everything is mine, because people might argue with you. You might say that sitar is yours, and I'd be like, no, that sitar is mine. I paid for that damn thing. That kind of stuff. So I hope that clears something up. I don't know if that really cleared anything up, but I feel like I've gone on long enough anyway. So if you want to support me being attached to the money that you send me, bad transition anyway, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my Patreon and PayPal accounts, and those are my number one, maybe far and away number one way of making a living. I just got a royalty check from Wisdom Publications yesterday, and it was about $1,000. So that's what I make per year on a book like Hardcore Zen, about $1,000. So that's why your contributions are very important to keeping me going, so I appreciate that. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't gotta pay if you don't want to pay. So we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Ziggy is inside with my wife, so I'm gonna have to sneakily do a cameo of him somehow. But we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Did I say that already? Anyway, bye. Hey Ziggy, you having a good time on the couch here? Being a study buddy? Yeah, well, I guess I'll just let you sleep. You're not going to do anything for us, are you? All right. Have a good nap, Ziggy.